Hi, everybody. It's a pleasure to meet everybody on the discussion posts. So, thank you for sharing about yourselves and what classes you're taking this semester, and also thank you for taking the time to respond to your peers. I really hope that we can build a community together. I wanted to go over a quick 5 minute video going through some of the potentially more complex problems that you might encounter in this first unit. Um, Let me move this to the center though. All right. So you're gonna log in. You're gonna use your first followed by a period and then your last name. Your ID is going to be whatever your ID is, but make sure there's that leading zero in the beginning. So let's start at the very beginning with unit one. So once you log in, you're gonna encounter this viewport right here, and then you're going to start with the problems right here. So household is one of them. I'm going to go ahead and reset it. So in terms of resetting, let's continue kind of making this the right size here so that we can fit more of the windows. So maybe may have to just zoom out though. No. And then one more. All right, so down here at the very bottom, this is where you can reset the problem. So if you ever messed up or anything like that, you can just go ahead and reset it back to the way it was. The first couple of problems will have you think about data types. So for a specific situation, you want to go, okay, am I thinking a boolean, a string, a double, or an int? So those are the first data types you're going to be introduced to. For this one, for example, if you're thinking in terms of number of people, typically you're not thinking in terms of a half of a person. So int might be the best answer. Technically speaking, you could actually use a double here because of the fact that, okay, if you want to treat a whole number as a decimal, all you're going to do is add that point zero, um, where there is no information past the point zero, but it would still work in terms of compiling the code. So you can continue with that. I'm going to show another one, maybe some of the um, more annoying ones. So here, now you're using variables. So if the current year is 2024, then you would do, I may have updated this tester already to use 2024, I hope. So we can do current year minus birth year. So I'll just double check. Once you type your solution though, right, there is this save button here. The reason you have to save before you compile is to just kind of limit the load on the server. I didn't want anybody to just go too crazy trying to compile their code when they haven't really changed much. So that's the reason there. And then also, you know, there is this attempt count. So if you want to be able to save 100 times but only compile once, that's only going to count as one attempt. So it's not until you push it to the server that's going to count. Right now, there is no attempt limit. So feel free to take your time with these and kind of make sure you're understanding what you're doing. So again, to go back to the problem, now we're thinking in terms of, okay, in order to use variables, and you need to declare them, which is the left side here, and then initialize them or assign them a value, which is the right side of the assignment statement here with the equal sign. And then you can perform simple math with Java. So minus, for example, is one that is definitely provided. And then you can also multiply, you can divide, and so those should be all in the notes. So there's that. Some of the more annoying problems will be at the end here, right? So I'm gonna go back ahead and reset this and talk about what it should look like. So for this problem, I mean, you're gonna encounter a problem earlier that's dealing with Kelvin or temperature here, but essentially there's this variable called int temp, and that has some value stored in it, and it's represented as some sort of temperature in Fahrenheit. You're trying to convert that to Celsius and then return it. But you have to make sure that you convert it properly, and then you need to make sure that you then convert it as an int when you're returning it. So what you can do is you could technically introduce whatever variables you think you need to introduce, right? The whole point of unit one is, hey, can I declare variables and assign them values? Sure. So let's say here I do, what if the result is temp times 2.0? Now, this is not correct, of course, because we know that that is not how you convert from Fahrenheit to Celsius. But I just wanted to show you what it might return and to also give you some starting point as far as like, hey, just try some things, um, even if it doesn't work, return result. The only thing right now also where you're just being asked to do it is this idea of having that return line. So you want to think of being able to calculate some sort of result and then returning it. We are not going into detail as far as why that's a necessary thing for methods. At this point, all of these problems deal with, hey, I need to complete some sort of logic that potentially calculates something, and then I'm going to return it. So that's going to be a repeating theme across all of these problems. So here I am attempting a solution. I know it doesn't work. I'm going to click play because I wanted to demonstrate this idea of casting. So when you see this message right here, incompatible types, that means that you are trying to store some bigger number that has, for example, decimal numbers into a container that can only hold the whole number portion. So here, when you have a calculation that involves a decimal number, in this case 2.0, this entire thing right here that I'm highlighting is actually going to be a decimal number. And if you try to store that into an int, it's going to truncate because it has to get rid of everything to the right of that decimal point, right? So when you have an int or integers and whole numbers, you can't have the decimal portion of it. So what you can do is tell the computer to cast it down to an int, which is then appropriate to store in that data type. So if I do this, it's no longer going to complain about the issue with that lossy conversion, but it is going to complain about the actual result. So for example, these are the method calls. So this is how this method is being used. It's called F to C, which is Fahrenheit to Celsius. So in this case, we are passing in 32 as that Fahrenheit value. And to the right of the arrow here is going to be 0, and that's the expected result. The result here on the right side is going to be the return of the logic that we wrote just now. And so we know here, well, yeah, if they pass in 32, it needs to return 0 degrees Celsius, not 64. So at that point, this is the part where it's an open notes type of exercise, so where you can go, oh, how do you convert that? So just go ahead and look it up, Fahrenheit to Celsius, see if you can figure out how to make the math work there. So just be careful kind of dealing with the decimal numbers. Sometimes you do want that decimal number, sometimes you don't. More importantly, if you have some calculation that's going to return some sort of decimal value, remember that you can add this right in front of that calculation to turn it back to an int. So yeah, so in summary, this is kind of going to be the starting point for a lot of the repetitive tasks that will hopefully force you to remember the syntax. So, it's an intro to Java programming. And so in order for you to be able to do the fun stuff later on, we want to really encourage you to learn the syntax. It's kind of like learning a language where if you don't learn some, basic foundation of vocabulary and sentence structure, it's just very difficult to communicate. Otherwise, you're always using a translator. In our case, we don't really want to be Googling the syntax every time we're given a problem. In the beginning, that's what you want to do to kind of confirm. But, the idea is I should be able to give you enough exercises where you internalize the content and the syntax, which is the way of writing the code. But yeah, thanks so much for all your work this week, and I hope to see more this weekend. And I hope this video helps you understand uh, my website here. So all these problems are actually written by me, and so no worries. I don't mind if you say this problem doesn't make sense. It's okay. I know for a fact that, the wording in the beginning is going to be weird for some people, but you do get better. So, thanks.